Welcome back, everybody. Can you believe it? 5 of us are in the house. That's been a while since we've all been on board. We're all deeply interested in having a chat today, especially Chris. He's riveted to what we'll be covering.
You notice he looks like the old Banner when he made us change the banner, and he looked super serious and annoyed. He looked like that in the opening sequence here.
I don't know if you've seen that lately. Chris has been mixing business and pleasure on his LinkedIn profile, and he has a video there of him flexing at the gym with his PT. And I decided to listen to this, and they talked about Smith being a machine, which I had to comment on. I didn't even know there's a workout, a piece of equipment called a Smith machine. Is that right? It's called the Smith machine. But anyhow, I took it as thus. Smith is a machine, and I'm like, thank you for the compliment. I see your PT's reached out to me, Chris.
This is your fault, man. This is your fault.
Like, hey, there's another guy I can that I can on board here. But anyhow, I'm excited that we're all together, and I suppose I'm more excited because for me, these type of sessions are always morning sessions, and for my friends here, they're all evening sessions, so they're all pretty much, tapped out for the day. But they are eager to share their ideas and thoughts. So, Anna, I'm going to throw to you. What's top of mind for you right now?
Hi everyone. Well, given that, as you mentioned, it is evening for us, it's actually 8:21 in the evening in the UK. And after this, we have another hour meeting. So after we stop recording this podcast, I would like to talk about work-life balance. Is mainly because I am surrounded by workaholics. My husband in particular is one of them. I would say that 80% of our arguments are about how stressed out he can be because of work and how much that affects us in our day-to-day life. So what do you guys think?
I do not get stressed out.
Do not get stressed out. Don't work at 9.
With that in mind, if anybody has followed us for some time, you will see that all of us tend to be prolific in our online and offline worlds. Will, I see you, from my external observation and never talking to you personally, I see that you're always...
That's a feature, not a bug. I'm not quite sure for which one of you it's a feature, but it's definitely a feature for one of you.
Well, it is a lie to start with, because we do converse from time to time. And but yeah, you always seem to be at a festival, at a party, having the most amazing life that I see all over Europe, might I add, or India for that matter as well, always jet setting somewhere. But I know that you're in this, very senior role inside the organization you work for. You have a lot of folks that depend on your talent. And
lack of.
How do you juggle?
I would say he depends on a lot of folks' talents. That's the
I just make the teas, Mark. That's what you do. Surround yourself by geniuses and make them tea, get them chocolate, feed them cake, keep them happy.
And that's it. And then you just so you're home by 5 each night and tucked up in bed by 6.
Exactly that. I mean, they're solid observations. And do you know what? I guess you're getting to that. How do you balance that point of view? And I for the last, ever since I started my professional career, I've been quite relentlessly pursuing the next thing, and studying. And I think Chris and I always used to joke and say insecure overachievers. Like we never felt good enough, so you always put in more and more and more and more hours. And that's affected me quite a lot in relationships, in social time with friends, in time with family members that have passed away. And I've always really quite deeply regretted that. And so I said about 6 months ago, I'm going to start saying yes to more things socially, but I'm also going to try and say yes to more things at work that have a good outcome, that have an epic meaning behind them, either mentorship or working more with larger groups of people. So with that, I have gone to more festivals. I've never been to a festival before in my life before. And then this year, I went to some of the biggest ones in the world, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm glad I started saying yes. And then, making more time to hang with friends and family have actually gone downhill because I've started hanging out with the girlfriend more and not balancing the friends and family side. So now that slips out. And then you start focusing too much on work and the rest slips out. So it is a really hard balance. And I think this is a really interesting topic that I get asked on a lot. I will give some more sort of tips as we go on, but I think, to sort of revert back to your original statement there, yes, I've been a busy boy.
Does anybody have boundaries? Like, as in that you've kind of created boundaries around your schedule, and how you kind of do you compartmentalize? How does it work?
Yeah, I have. I'm brutal, actually. The thing that's important, I block my calendar. I actually make my calendar open to every single person that I work with across every organization, and I block it. And I actually tell them, this is when I sleep, this is when I go to gym, this is when I feed my children. And I've had people do this to me before where they schedule time and when I'm eating dinner. I'm like, absolutely, I'll take the call. Let me show you what it feels like. And I take the call, and they're dealing with kids and food and shit everywhere. And I'm like, you know what? This is your own fucking fault, yo. So it's the truth, right? I'm like, if this is what you want to do, if you can't respect my time, then let me show you exactly how being disrespectful feels. And I do that.
So I do something similar. And for me, it's that I block. I have a rule, right? Which is that I try to stick to no more than 3 or 4 hours a day in meetings or calls. And I try to steer those into what's everyone laughing at?
Because your wife's looking at you like you're talking crap.
As you're talking, I was watching Anna's face to see whether she believed what you were saying.
No, let's not turn this into a debate.
I'll show you my calendar.
No.
I
it's
schedule.
Good. Just carry on. It's great.
I steer meetings and calls, and I make myself available for those in the overlap hours between North America and Europe, particularly North American Eastern time, and then, either UK time or Central European time. And, for me, this originally started off as not a way to control my calendar and set boundaries. It started off as a way for me to be able to hop across the sea pretty regularly and not have to rebook all of my standing meetings. But I did have an experience a while back that I worked at I'm sure many of us have had this experience. I worked at a company. I'm not going to say who it is. You can look at my LinkedIn profile and guess, but it's anyone's guess, right? I worked at a company that just had a horrendous culture of respect for other people's schedule and calendars. And in fact, this company had they actually had a policy that everyone's calendar was supposed to be open so that anyone else could read it. And I turned it off. And I was spoken to about this, despite being in a senior role. I actually, it was like someone spoke to me about this. And I said, you have two choices. You can fire me or you can let me have a closed calendar. And the reason was because this particular organization, there was just this sort of culture of other people thinking that they were the arbiters of what was most important on your schedule, right?
Yeah.
So-and-so, if he wanted to book over something that he thought, because he thought his thing was more important than the thing that you had booked. And my reasoning on this is that you don't have that right. It needs to be enough for you to know that I am busy at this time. End of story. And that was where I think my boundary setting around calendars actually came in, despite the fact that Anna doesn't think that I have any. But I do in fact work hard at this.
Yeah, I think you work harder ever since the accident, but I do think you're sleeping back in, because the biggest challenge that I guess you guys have, we all have, but in this perspective, people just assume that because I'm a mom, I need my time. So I do find that people are much more respectful to my calendar than I think they would be to Andrew's calendar, and I assume Chris's calendars, and yours, Mark, and yours, Will, just because they assume that you can just take a call in between like 2 sessions of Peloton and like writing a proposal and whatever.
That's interesting.
This is where, you know, the other side of the coin actually, I see it a lot because we work together, right? Andrew and I work together. Andrew and Chris and Mark and I, we all work together. Andrew has a busy day. He's got an important job of keeping his own company alive, right? Everybody wants him, obviously. So I do feel that the boundary setting of 3 hours per day is sleeping because there's just so much demand. So I would be super curious. I also think that you don't sleep, Mark, because I see
Mark is insane.
Emails from you, you know, morning, noon, and night. And yeah, I would hate for you guys to get seriously ill, or, you know, to not be able to focus or burn out. I think it is easier for me to establish a work-life balance.
That's such an interesting observation, and I hadn't seen or thought about that before. That people potentially avoid because they know you have a family and looking after kids.
How many times when you have been invited to speak at a conference, and let's just say it was a virtual conference, and your speaking slot was at, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever. How many times did somebody ask you whether that interferes with your kid's bedtime? Because I do get that question asked.
Yeah, I never get it. Really, and then I often get the situation where I will have to end a call on time because I said, hey, I've got to take my kids to daycare, or I've got to feed my kids, or I've got to, and there's definitely do you, you know, it's almost like, isn't somebody else doing that? Like,
yeah.
What do you do that as well?
And my friends are actually surprised, like, all of my friends are telling me, oh, you should slow down. You should really slow down. You shouldn't be like that stressed out. When we were working together, Will will always be like, I'm really worried about you. I think you're doing too much. And that's you know, really nice. And I still burn out sometimes, but I'm wondering, how many times do men in our industry get given the same courtesy?
It's really interesting. And Anna, actually, you made me reflect on something that you said to me that I found really quite profound. So I agree. I think we're probably all guilty. It's slightly systemic in regards to, you know, the old ways of thinking. But I remember, and you get this a lot where, especially, and once again, only towards women most of the time, which is once you have a family and they see you're working a career, they go, you're having it all. And I remember I once said that to you, and I have you told me, I went, Annie, you're having it all. And you said, well, no, I'm not. It's impossible to have it all, but I'm trying to get as much of it as I can. And I really liked that. Yeah. I thought that was such a nice way of looking at it.
Do you know what I've seen? And by the way, this. Thank you, Anna. This was an unexpected turn from what I like, kind of the ho-hum, let's all talk about how we manage our calendars. So this, I think, is really good. But I've observed at several points throughout my career, the hostility, maybe not always hostility, but sort of the least supportive people of parents, of particularly of mothers with young children, have been several, and I can think of specific examples, several female colleagues that I've had who did not have children or families. And, you know, in several cases, several actually confided in me and said, you know, it really frustrates me that so-and-so gets to come into the office later, all because they have kids, as if the rest of us don't have things to be doing. And I think at the time these conversations were happening, before I had a child, I just sort of didn't care, right? It was sort of like, you know, girl, there are way bigger things to worry about than resenting your colleagues who are mothers. But now, as I think back on it, I'm actually enraged, right? Like I feel sort of this fury at at folks who basically I've seen take the position, oh, everyone is so nice to so-and-so because she's a mom and she can get away with anything. And like thinking back on that now, I haven't thought about this in years. It really sort of infuriates me.
But that's poisonous. And as we are talking about work-life balance in a group that clearly, I mean, I don't know, maybe I should just speak to myself. In a group that I believe doesn't have any work-life balance right now because things are just moving too fast and you need to like hustle. Starting with the idea that parents would need more support is poisonous because that would make you not want to associate yourself with parents and vice versa, thinking that people who don't have kids, are not married, don't have a family, whatever, can work more would annihilate those folks from your organization as well, right? Because they're going to be like, what the hell?
Also, I see a scenario where a lot of people, their work is their life.
Yep.
In other words, I've noticed that some people actually would struggle to live with themselves. And what I mean by that is free time for them is something they don't like.
They live to work, not work to live. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for them, like for me, I couldn't think of something more amazing than be dropped on a desert island with no tech and no body for a week.
Like you're sort of non-corporeal, no body?
That would be bliss, right, for me, because for me, I'd be like, I would get this uninterrupted time just to think. And if you look at the way whole society is run, it's really designed for us not to think. To be bombarded with messaging and stuff that says go do and think on your behalf. A lot of people are buzzing, like, and one of the measures for me is when I look at my career and I can look at years that I can't find any distinctly thing that pops out of those years. In other words, 1 year blended into the next, one project blended into the next. And it was just the same thing, different year, nothing that kind of stands out. And some people, they don't want to spend time by themselves or don't have a life outside of their work. You know, if they don't have children, family, other things that are coming at them. And so therefore it is easy to get caught into that and then wonder why other people do have these other things, you know, going on. I mean, how many people, like I saw a stat come out of the UK recently around retirement and how in the 70s, the average retirement or pool on the pension in the UK was something like either 25 or 35 years. So in other words, from somebody starting to collect their pension, they collected it for all those years before they left this earth, right? The average time now in the UK is 8 years.
Yeah. But one thing that's interesting about that is a lot of people start out wanting to work to enable life. You know, they get a good job. They want to get a bigger job with more money, bigger house. You know, the classic, you know, economic throughput. But then you get incremental life absorption. So a bit like saying, I'm going to stay out for another drink. 1 more hour won't hurt. That's 1 more hour of happiness you borrowed from tomorrow. We call it a hangover. Now, the difference there is you get incremental life absorption as well, where you'll say, okay, I'm going to work a little bit harder. And then you start eating into your hobby time. But that's okay, because you're going to be ahead of your project. And that becomes a pattern. Then you drop the hobby, you drop the family dinner, and you suddenly, you accidentally come into a workaholic. I would like to move on to a topic about, you know, we're seeing this a lot in the community, but I'll come back to that because I can tell Andrew's poised to say something. Yeah.
I was just going to pick up on something that Mark said, and this is there's a few different threads to weave together here. So one of the things that the topics that I've been interested in through the years has been this idea that over the course of history, and in actually very recent times, it's a very recent historical development that wealthier, better off people work these outrageously long days, these outrageously long weeks, right? For most of human history, affluence produced leisure time. And if you don't believe me, go watch Downton Abbey. Anna and I have just finished rewatching it all, right? Like, you wonder what were those people doing all day, right?
They
like
were changing, obviously. They were changing
their outfits and they were having tea, right? So
what else is there?
But exactly. but this is a fairly recent development in human history where affluence now does not necessarily, and in fact, in many cases, does not equal more leisure time. And and I'm no sociologist. I don't. This is not something I study, but I do find it interesting. I've wondered if part of that phenomenon isn't something to do with the convergence of tools, right? In that so much of work and so much of leisure now happens using the same set of devices, right? So, which then sort of raises another question, and that's the difference between work and what I will call, because for lack of a better word, industriousness. And here's what I mean by that.
Oh, I like that.
For a very long time in my life, I just referred to the long blocks of time, sometimes 16 hours a day, right? That, especially when I was writing books, that I would spend with a laptop or with an iPad. I preferred to write books on my iPad, right? And I just sort of called all of it work, right? But for me, writing fiction was very, not that work wasn't enjoyable, but writing fiction was it. I guess it wasn't work, but it looked a lot like work. Yeah. And that's why I'm calling it industriousness, because I was still sitting at the same device doing something that looked a lot like work, even though for me, I writing fiction, writing novels was, is extraordinarily, it's good for my soul. I enjoy it. I love doing it.
I think that's a good point, because the fact that work blends into personal life, because to give you an example, tomorrow we've got a dinner. It's a friend's dinner. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait.
We're bringing our daughter to this dinner. We don't have childcare in the UK. Like, unless we sell her, there's nothing, right? We need to bring this child with us.
I don't know if that counts as childcare. I count that as...
the circus would probably be interested.
To the circus, I mean, because she's like really good at singing songs. She does a bit of gymnastics anyway.
Well, and actually lately has been very into pretending to be a monkey. So, I mean, all the signs.
Right. But Andrew's like, oh, I think we're going to have to talk a lot about AI. We should get childcare.
Flag. Andrew did not say that. Christopher said that. Because raise your hand if you're going to this dinner. Raise your hand.
To be fair.
It's not fair, Mark.
Okay, somebody mentioned...
No invite. How rude.
I'll dial you in.
Somebody mentioned that during this dinner, we may talk a lot about work, and therefore we would disrupt the dynamic of the group, because people want to talk about these subjects. We're going to be running around after our child. And I'm like, I've been looking forward to this dinner for like the last 2 weeks or so. Can I just go and have an overpriced curry and a cocktail in like, why can this just be like a nice dinner? And so, yeah, you're right. I feel like even if we're setting up like, a very pleasurable thing, meeting up with your friends, if your friends are entrepreneurs or from your industry, or you end up still doing work. So again, disrupting that work-life balance. And is that healthy? I'm just wondering.
Is work-life balance a myth? Is it a modern term?
Yeah, is it still a thing? Right.
Is it like, I just saw a guy say on X the other day, and he was just like, when you hire people to our company, we make it crystal clear that we'll be working 10-hour days, and we'll probably work on Saturday and Sundays as well. Are you up for that? This is the way this company is going to go. And if you look at any big companies that have grinded at the start, they did crazy, ridiculous hours. They didn't have work-life balance. The richest man in the world, I would have probably a lot of people agree with me, probably doesn't have a work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And my wife doesn't like him because she was like, imagine his kids, how they must have to live with the leftovers of his work, time wise. But I'm like, is work-life balance just a modern concept? Because if you go back 150 years, when the sun came up, you worked. When the sun went down, you stopped working, and you were in bed, pretty soon after that. But you would be out physically working. We just have an electronic world that we work with a lot more. And as Andrew said, the device blend of work and activity has kind of overlapped so much.
I think the work-life balance, first of all, I find it to be an off-putting phrase, but that's because I think that it is frequently misused and misunderstood. But one of the ways that I think we collectively misunderstand work-life balance is that we often think about it in terms of the calendar, right? Or the hours in a day that we work. Look at where we went as this topic began to unfold. But one of the ways I think that we would be well served to realize that work-life balance is going to play out in different ways for different people. And one of the ways that I think that it plays out, which I thought that we were over this as a society, at least in occupations that don't require that don't always require physical presence. So clearly, for a lot of teachers and physicians and, et cetera, there's Amazon delivery drivers, right? There's a lot, there's a need to be in a specific physical place. And I thought we were over this, but what I've seen over the last year is this idea of, this return to office nonsense, and the employers again starting to being more and more assertive about caring where people are physically. And I, like I said, I thought we were over this, and it drives me crazy. And listen, some of the world's most successful companies across multiple industries are now increasing these return to office mandates. I think they're nuts, but I do think that work-life balance can play out in different ways for different people. It's not always about the calendar. Part of it is about, one, allowing people to be in places and with people that they care about, but also, frankly, allowing people to be in places where they are able to do their best work. And for some people, that's an office, and for some people, it isn't.
So I absolutely agree, and it's the bit I wanted to comment on, which is I believe it's the name itself, the title work-life balance, guides us in the wrong direction. It's not a fixed state, and it does mean something different to everybody. And I always use the phrase work-life integration, because that's what it really is, right? It's not a balance. You're integrating it in how it fits for you. So if you know, our roles are all different, our day-to-days are all different, our family makeup's all different, our hobbies are all different, and you just find the ebbs and flows of life and work and the best way to integrate that. Now, where I see this happening a lot, and it's advice I give out, is when people first start getting involved in the community. They get so addicted to it, and you get all this FOMO, and you suddenly, and the biggest piece of advice I give is, because they say, oh, I didn't get to go to Nordic Summit, oh, I didn't get to go to Dynamics, oh, then we've got Colour Cloud, we've got Scottish Summit, we've got something, you get the point, right? And it gets intense, and then, oh, I've got 4 talks there, and I'm doing 3 talks tomorrow, and they wear it as a badge of honor, and you're like, and then they're absolutely exhausted, their family's crumbling or whatever. And again, the moment it starts feeling like a chore, it starts exhausting you, it starts feeling like work, just stop it. It's that addiction, it's that drive, it's that incremental absorption thing again that really gets you. So go back to that. What's my work-life integration? Because this integration is failing.
Is it through the integration neighborhood? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out Anna and Andrew's articles on that. But this is more from the life sort of representation.
Yeah. But you know what though? Like, okay, so I've been doing this type of thing now since 2008, right? Like, I've been doing it for a long time, right? And I've been conferencing, like proper conferencing, since 2013. Okay, so it's 11 years, man. I've been doing this 11 years. And like, something I've worked out is, number one, I love it. Like, I love doing it. I've never not liked doing it. I like going to conferences. I like traveling. I like seeing people. I like getting on stage. I would happily get on stage 10 times in a row at an event. No problem.
Yeah.
For me, I don't, and I like your talk, your discussion there, Will, because work-life integration is key. What I do is I work on integrating things together. Like, as an example, the last event, I managed to go to gym 4 times out of the 5 days, like hardcore gym. Not like 1 hour. I'm talking like 2 hours out of the event. I've learned how to bake in things for work, and like, I have call times with the family. Like, that's important, right? Um, and I think it is work-life integration, but at the same time, I know millions of people. I can tell you millions of people, and Stuart Cassie and I had this talk when I was still at Hitachi, and he's like, oh, what they'll do is, he told me, like, him and Tori would go to work and then they'd come back and then sit on the lounge with their laptops on their lap.
Absolutely.
And think about it. Like, I mean, that's just what it is, right? Like, it is work-life integration. If that's what you're comfortable doing, just do it, right? I do think it's also important that you force yourself out. Like, we have family days in my house. What we'll do is we will go out and make a quest somewhere, like every kind of second weekend. And then I have date days with the kids every month. So I have one day Adam, one day Lexi, one day Luna every weekend for the entire month. But it's funny because I'll tell you something interesting. My mom messaged me and she's like, oh, you're not spending enough time at home. I'm like, okay, just tell me, how much time do you think I spend away from home? And I said to her, let me give you a piece of information here, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. When I was working at Hitachi, I was traveling to the office, leaving at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I was getting back at 10 at night every single day of my life. I have train tickets to prove. I have a stack of them like that. Mm-hmm. And I said to my mom, I said, you need to think about this.
Tickets?
Do you think I spend less time at home now or more time at home now? She said, no, you spend less time at home. I'm like, you're actually incorrect. But the problem is that people don't see it. They choose to see what they want to see.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I've actually counted the amount of days I spend away from home.
That's it. And you know what? And I like, because I quoted Anna earlier, I want to quote Chris now, which is, and this undoes some of the stuff we've said, but actually Anna stated saying, hey, look, this group's got very, our work-life balance is quite extreme and swings like a pendulum. But Chris said something to me, I think it was about a week, 2 weeks ago, and it resonated so well, which is people go, oh, Will, you need to get your balance right, etc. I was like, well, no, I don't, because it works for me. And Chris said this, and he went, and I chose this life. This is what I like doing. I chose this life. I like the intensity. I find the balance. I find the integration. Let's throw balance out the window. I find the work-life integration, and this is what I chose. It works for me. So you might not think it's appropriate for you, and it probably isn't, because your parameters are completely different to mine. But I do like Chris's quote on that, which is, I chose this life. I like going up and speaking at 6 sessions of an event. I like going on stage 10 times. I like taking out, days out and making strong barriers. It's whatever works for you. Just make it work.
I think that is a really important point, especially I think for probably a number of people who listen to this, who watch or listen to this show. And here's what I mean. I've gotten to do some quite interesting things outside of this world, like drive boats in an official capacity. But excuse me, in one form or another, I have been in this world of kind of Microsoft or other sort of partner space, working at a consultancy or a similar type organization, working in that environment. I've been in that world for since 2001, right? So I've been in that world for 23 years, and what I've seen, a lot of it feels very normal to me, right? It feels very normative to me. But I've seen a lot of people who have left, say, the classic example is people who have been successful in IT or in app development or whatever at a customer, right? And they leave that world of a customer and they go to a partner, they go to a consultancy where suddenly they're expected to be utilized or to bill a certain number of hours. For those who are wondering, I think that this is more extreme in the United States, where the billing requirement is often 40 hours a week, and then you will support sales and learn things on top of the 40 hours per week, right? In the UK, they're a little bit more forgiving, but not very much more forgiving. And I've seen people just go from customer land to partner land and get fried very, very quickly. And I think that is a transition that, often can be seen like, I'm going to go, I might make more money in partner land, but there are trade-offs, right? It is a life that you are choosing, and you need to, it's very hard to jump in, right? Especially if you're not acclimatized to it.
And it goes back to that hedonic treadmill of life, which is, you're going to keep going that incremental absorption. It's going to feel good for a bit. Then you go back to it, not feeling the same. So you do a bit more and you do a bit more. And you're chasing that dopamine kick of, insecure overachievement. You know what? I love this podcast. I think we could probably talk about it for hours on end because it's such a personal topic that we all have our own personal points on. And I honestly, it's been so enjoyable.
And with that, we will wrap. We'd love to get your feedback if you're listening and or watching this. How do you juggle and integrate all the things that you've got going on in your life, both paid and unpaid? How does it work for you? We'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you. Until next time, ciao, ciao.
Sweet.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye guys. See ya.